You just filmed your first podcast and you had the best conversation between you and your guest. As you two were talking, you could already imagine this podcast getting cut up into clips, getting massive views, viral clip after clip after clip. But then you realize, wait, somebody's got to edit this podcast. You remember the ums and the ahs and that weird thing that happened in the middle that you want to take out. And then it hits you, you just filmed this whole conversation with just one camera. In fact, it was just with a phone. We have to level up this podcast edit. In this video, you're gonna see how to make a podcast edit look pro when you filmed it with just one phone. And you're gonna see how you can make that one camera look like you shot the podcast with multiple cameras. Let's get into it. You just filmed your whole podcast and now we're gonna bring it into the timeline. So I'm gonna drag the podcast into Premiere Pro and I'm gonna organize this. You gotta stay organized as you edit. So I'm gonna title this Clips. I'm gonna create a new bin and create sequence. And in here, I'm gonna open up, create a new sequence by pressing Command N, and I'm gonna title this raw clips, and you're gonna see why in a bit. So I go back and I'm gonna drag this podcast clip into this clips folder, open it up. I'm gonna drag this clip into the timeline, and it's gonna give me this warning, and I'm gonna say change the sequence settings. So all that does is it's gonna change the sequence so that it matches the settings of the clip. So if it was filmed in 4K, it's gonna change the sequence settings so that it is set for 4K. So here's the clip, and it's the whole podcast, and what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to zoom into this clip. I'm gonna go into the effects control, and because we filmed it in 4K, we're able to zoom into this clip approximately 200%, maybe I'll go like 175 or something like that. And I'm gonna reposition it so that it shows the person on the left. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate this, Command C, move it over to the timeline a bit, and Command V to paste. So I duplicated it, but what I'm gonna do with this duplicate clip is I'm gonna reposition it so that it reveals the guy on the right, like so. So now what I have on the timeline are two clips, one on the left and one on the right. So if I go back to my clips bin, what I would like to see here are three clips. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make it so that this one clip turns into three original source clips, as if I filmed this podcast from three different angles or three different frames. How I'm gonna accomplish this is creating nested clips. So when I go over to this, I'm gonna highlight this clip, I'm gonna right click and click nest. And when I do, I'm gonna title this left, meaning that this is showing the person on the left. I'm gonna go to this clip, right click, click nest, and title it right. So now what I did, I just created two nested clips. It doesn't look like anything happened. It just seemed like it just turned it green, but it actually is doing more than this. I mean, nesting clips, it just means that you're able to manage all of your clips better. It's able to group all multiple clips into one sequence. For the purpose of this video, it's helpful because it kind of creates a new clip for you without having to ruin the original clip. So when I did this, you'll see when I go back into the original folder, these are the two new nested sequences that it created, this left and this right. So I'm gonna drag these into the clips folder. When I open it up, now you're gonna see my three new clips, and it kind of looks like I used three cameras. This is the original, this is the person on the right, and this is the person on the left. And what I'm gonna do with this one is I'm gonna rename this both. And so now it looks like we have a camera angle that has both of us, a camera angle that has just the person on the right, and a camera angle that looks like it has the person on the left. But really all I did was just zoom in. I'm gonna select these three things, and I'm going to right click, scroll down to create multi-camera source sequence. And this is where all the magic happens. I'm gonna title this podcast edit. Audio track can be set to 1, stereo's fine, and you wanna make sure use clip names is selected. Hit OK. So now it created a new multi-cam sequence. And it threw all of the clips in this new folder called process clips. We don't have to worry about that for now. We just wanna focus on this new clip. Okay, so what you could do from here is right click, go down to new sequence from clip. So it created a new sequence and it automatically threw it down in my timeline. And so from here, it just looks like, hey, it looks like the original clip with just the both of us, but it's actually more nuanced than that. This is actually a multi-cam sequence, and you get to really see the magic when you toggle on the multicam view. And it's this icon here. And if you don't see this, you're gonna click this plus icon and it's gonna show you a bunch of buttons that you can drag on. Just find that and drag it down here, hit OK, and you're going to enable this view. So this is what you should be seeing. This is the multicam sequence view. Over on the left-hand side, you see the 3 clips that we're working with. And over on the right side, this is considered your program monitor, what it's actually showing. And the fun thing about this is that you'll notice that there's this yellow rectangle, this outline box, and that's highlighting over the clip with both of us. But that yellow outline is actually being triggered by some keyboard buttons that I can press. So when I press 1, it's actually selecting this clip. When I press 2, it moves over to this second clip. When I press 3, it moves over to this third clip. And so what I'm doing is I'm able to edit this podcast just by a press of a button. You can rearrange this order. So if you go over to this wrench icon, you go down to edit cameras. And so this is where it's helpful. To me, it makes more sense that the person on the left is button number 2. So I'm gonna rearrange this. So 1 is both, 2 is left, 3 is right. Hit OK, and it just rearranges the order of your clips so that when I press 2, in my mind, it makes more sense that it's going from left and then number 3 is the person on the right. And number 1 is both. I'm gonna go down into the timeline and I'm gonna start from the beginning. Now, what you're gonna do is you're gonna press the space bar. When the space bar is pressed and the video is playing, you are in live editing mode. When you press a new number, it's gonna cut to that new camera and it's gonna remember that edit. But you're gonna notice as the playhead is moving and you're switching between the cameras, it looks like nothing is happening. I mean, yes, you'll see the camera angles are changing, but it doesn't look like the cuts are being made. Don't freak out about that. When you pause the video, it's gonna make all the edits after you pause the video. So we're gonna start from the very beginning. I'm gonna start with 2, and let's just see me edit this live. Did you know that you can record a podcast and make it look like that you use multiple cameras, but you only just use one?
No, how do you do that?
Yeah, you do it in post. You edit it, and what you can do is you can zoom in to one side, you zoom into the other side, and you cut back and forth. And there you go. That's the whole podcast edit, and you just saw me edit it live. I was cutting between all the cameras. It made me feel like a boss as I was editing it. It's the closest thing you could do to directing your own feature film, right? Go to this camera, cut to black. Anyway, so I just finished this whole podcast edit in one go, but if you wanted to make tweaks, you can kind of go over and let's say I pause the playhead over here. If I change this to, if I press a different number, let's say I press 1, it'll automatically cut to this new camera and remembers that camera angle. And you can do that across all the clips. But let's say I want to jump to me a lot sooner. And so what you're going to do is use a rolling edit tool. So you're going to click this, hold this down and select rolling edit. The keyboard shortcut is N. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to click this and I'm going to move it over. So all this does is moves the position between the edits. So it rolls the edit over so that it can go to the next clip whenever you want. If you want it to move later, you can move it later. If you want it sooner, it can be sooner. And if you're happy with your edit, then you're good to go. So let's go ahead and play this back after I made those edits.
Did you know that you can record a podcast and make it look like that you use multiple cameras, but you only just use one? No, how do you do that? Yeah, you do it in post.
So right there, I want to cut to me sooner so I can press the N, move it sooner. So now.
No, how do you do that? Yeah, you do it in post. You edit it, and what you can do is you can zoom in to one side, you zoom into the other side, and you cut back and forth.
There you go. So it feels a little bit more natural when I do that. So you can kind of go in and finesse it, but if you feel comfortable with your main edit, you're good to go. One thing I forgot to mention though, and this actually, you probably want to do this a lot sooner, is you actually want to make sure this sequence is set to 1920 by 1080. Hit OK, hit OK. And you're gonna notice that everything's zoomed in right away. You don't have to worry about that just yet. What I'm gonna do is have that clip selected and I'm going to scale this back by 50%, copy this, and paste this across all the other clips. And I do that by doing Option Command V, and this pastes the attributes, hit OK, and everything looks back to normal again. And the reason why you want to do this is you want to make sure your video footage is filmed in 4K, but you want your editing timeline to be in 1080p. And the reason why you want to do that is because if you have your editing timeline sequence set to 4K and you're using 4K footage, when you zoom into 4K footage, that footage is going to lower in quality. But let's say your timeline is set to 1080 and you have 4K footage, you can zoom in and it's still gonna keep its high quality because you're just zooming in to 1080p. And 1080p still looks great. So that's what you wanna do. You wanna make sure your footage is in 4K and you wanna make sure your timeline is in 1080p and you can zoom in as much as you want, or at least up to 200%. So once you're good with that, you can change the color, you can do sound design, add captions, nameplates, or whatever you want, and you can export your video and make sure that when you export it in 1080p and you're good to go. So let me know in the comments, do you wanna know what settings you need to make your phone or your camera so that when you edit, it stays high quality? Or do you wanna see how you can make a podcast clip perfect for YouTube Shorts, Reels, or TikTok? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.